Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and the death of Julian Fipps. Julian Fipps died in Clarendon, North Carolina on January 9, 2023. It appears to be a homicide. He was shot a number of times, and it was stated that the cause of death, I guess you could say weapons involved were feet, hands, teeth, and a gun. And I'm sure he was likely beaten pretty badly, brutalized. It seems like a savage, beating, and very merciless type of killing. And Julian Phipps, don't have a time of birth for him, so I had to improvise into a solar/sunrise chart. Sun is in Gemini. He was born June 19th, 1991. Sun is in Gemini. Moon is in Virgo or Libra, depending on birth time. And I don't know his rising sign because I don't know his time of birth, but I am suspicious that it may be Scorpio. He seems like somebody that could be very controlling, manipulative, very sneaky, surreptitious, personality. I got the feeling he was likely a lot less loquacious than the typical Gemini sun. And the thing is, I'm going to talk about some natal placements and transits that may be tied in to his death. And first, I want to just talk a little bit about himself and his basic personality, and some things just in his natal chart and his general life. And first off, having the sun in Gemini. I mean, Geminis, not all Geminis are created equal. He was somebody that had been, in some trouble with the law. Gemini, in a negative manifestation, could be, actually adversarial toward the law, I would say, because it is the opposite sign of Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is connected with the law, veracity, the truth. Gemini sometimes will try to stretch the truth or omit certain facts, try to actually, instead of being the law, outmaneuver the law, basically. And the thing is, his moon being in Virgo, or Libra, depending, on birth time. The moon is about our emotional needs. It's our hidden personality. The sun represents the conscious side of the person, and the moon, the unconscious side. If his moon was in Libra, there may have been a little superficial charm he might put on. Just maybe not always be consciously aware of it. He may have had more of an emotional need for relationships than he may have realized. If the moon is in Virgo, the emotional needs are more connected, with health and diet, nutrition, having a certain routine. Doing things again that could be associated with one's health. It could be work, employment. There is maybe even things that require analysis or defragging, analyzing things, whether it could be diagnosing vehicles, what have you. He has a fairly strong Leo influence in his chart too, and there was, I do believe that he did, he was in a situation with Courtney Heater where he did hurt her and really, physically harmed her excessively. And it's interesting because he has Mars conjunct Venus and Leo in his chart. And, the conjunctions in astrology are neutral. The aspects, they could have good and bad qualities in them. I mean, Venus conjunct Mars, by itself, can, indicate just putting a lot of energy into your relationships and into, love and romance. But at the same time, I would say it could also indicate contentious relationships, and being in Leo, having a lot of, arguments that are loud, boisterous, vociferous, ones that might even gain, some kind of attention, and it could be physical battles as well. And the conjunction from Jupiter can enlarge this, as I've stated in previous videos. Jupiter, though it's very strongly benign and benevolent, can also, is paradoxical, could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand matters. And the thing is, another thing I noticed in his natal chart is that he has Jupiter square Pluto, which can indicate he may have been somebody that may have tried to, coerce others, really forcibly, try to get others to believe, get in his philosophies, convince others of his beliefs. He has Jupiter and Domineer in Leo, and Pluto, though generational being in Scorpio, could even add more manipulation to this. And the thing is, now looking at some other things in his chart, I notice he has Neptune conjunct the North Node, and it could indicate maybe sadly that his future may have been tied in, with escapism, with drugs to some degree. Being in Capricorn, Capricorn, could be more something that was more consistent and constant. Unfortunately, with him, he has based on the solar sunrise time, he has his the sun is square the moon, and the aspect by itself can sometimes indicate turbulent, stormy relationships with others. He may have had more difficulty in the relationships he was in than the typical Gemini sun, I would say. And he also has the sun making a semi-square aspect to his Venus, and that could indicate some difficulties with relationships right there. The thing about this too is that we're going to go to now talk about some natal placements and transits that may have been tied in with his death. The thing is, first off, in his natal chart, he does have Leo on the cusp of the 4th house, and based on the solar sunrise chart, of course, and it's at 29 degrees, which is an anaretic crisis degree. I mean, Leo on the 4th house by itself can sometimes, let's say, indicate its 4th house represents the end of life. It could be the end of life. That could be very dramatic. It could have been something that had a very a lot of loudness, so to speak. I mean, if he was beaten savagely. I mean, Leo is a savage sign, so this could be an indicator. In some cases where that end of life can end in that manner. Leo is also about ferocity, and it could have been done with a lot of that Leo ferocity. The transit moon was in Leo at that time, and that's an indicator. Right, that the feelings, the moon is about the emotions, the feelings, and could be very loud, boisterous energy. Somebody may have acted in a way with a lot of that that Leo type ferocity and rage. And the thing too is looking at this as well, he had a transit sun. Well, first let's go to having Capricorn on the cusp of the 8th house in the solar/sunrise chart. That could indicate in some cases of death, because the 8th house is associated with death, a death that can be, one that for some people might cause more despondency, more sorrow, more sadness. One where there may have been premeditation and plan, because 8th house is the house of murder as well, and it appears he was killed. Then this could have been something that was well planned out and was very calculated and done in a more cold and callous, undemonstrative manner. And one of the Saturn rules Capricorn. So the ruler of that 8th house, it falls in the 9th house in the solar/sunrise chart, and that's an indicator that this is a death that we were going to see being published. And it's interesting because Saturn is in Aquarius, which is the sign of the internet and social media, published on the internet. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that. I'm back. But anyway, and another thing that I'm saying in here, what's interesting is that, as far as transits go, he has transit Uranus was making, say, loose opposition to his natal Pluto. And that could suggest that Pluto is connected with death. And Pluto and Scorpio, the generational, can indicate a death that was done, or a murder committed that was in a very surreptitious and secretive manner. There's still a lot of details on this, I believe, that are very nebulous and unclear, to say the least. But transit Uranus opposing that Pluto, I would say, maybe in this case, may have manifested in that any friends or any groups and people were away from this death. We're not able to say what had happened with Julian Fipps. And another thing too is that one thing that transit that really stands out to me is the transit Sun in Capricorn was very close to his natal North Node. When you have the North Node involved in transit, it can often indicate issues one may have to address and confront. The Sun in astrology is about life. This was a time where he obviously had to deal with some issue regarding his life. It was a very important moment. And the fact it's in Capricorn, this was something, his life was taken in a very, a cold, seems like a very cold and calculated manner. And Capricorn can be ruthless, I would say, in a negative, manifestation. And also, too, at the time, of his passing, is that transit Mercury in Capricorn was also very close to his natal Neptune at this time. And when you have this aspect, could manifest in a number of ways. It could have given certain confusion in thinking. Mercury in Capricorn, the transit by itself could indicate thinking in a way where you're very melancholy, very despondent. But Mercury is also connected with short journeys, and Neptune is about deception and duplicity. I'm thinking it's possible somebody may have, deceived him and lured him somehow and gotten him into that, situation that was perilous, where he met his untimely end. Another thing is that transit Mercury was at least, making a loose conjunction to his natal Uranus. And a thing about that, to me, could also, indicate. Mercury, transit Uranus by itself can indicate. Mercury is about short journeys, and it might be something unusual happened during this short journey that he took, something very completely unexpected and shocking. The thing about this too is that when you look at this, this really, this is a looking at just the transits, and there are again some indicators that there was to me that this was very with this Capricorn energy, something that was very cold, calculated, ruthless, planned. It was likely very planned and premeditated, I would say. And the thing that what's interesting is that Neptune in the solar sunrise chart is very close to his 8th house cusp. And that could indicate where the death could be one that could be nebulous and unclear, one that doesn't where it's going to be hard to get the details from. And the fact that his appears to be a homicide, murder took place when Mercury is retrograde, that's an indicator that, you know, there may be more information pertaining to this that is being suppressed right now, that the cops are being, you know, law enforcement is being tight-lipped about. Mercury is in disciplined, introspective Capricorn at this time, and, you know, the fact being retrograde, it's more about, you know, information being held inside and not actually coming out with it. And you know, the thing is, this is just you know, a situation where, you know, somebody met an untimely ending. Um, the sun, you know, I talked about this in the past, not to be overly redundant with this, but having, you know, it never ceases to amaze me. You know, how many, you know, people that have, you know, the sun, you know, moon or ascendant in Gemini or Virgo may pass quicker, you know, compared to the other zodiac signs on average, and this is certainly no exception. Julian Fipps, being a sun in Gemini, you know, you know, dies at, you know, 31 years old, you know, prime of his life basically. And it's ironic because he was somebody I believe should have been the primary suspect in the death of Courtney Heater, which I do believe he likely killed. You know, there was no investigation really into it, the best of my knowledge, and you know, he had gotten out of this unscathed, not my opinion. And it's what's ironic about it is that Courtney Heater had a son, and her son was in Gemini. She had a Virgo ascendant, and she died at a very young age in her 20s. And Julian Fipps, you know, is murdered, appears to be murdered, and he's a sun in Gemini. So it's just very ironic the way this worked out. But and another thing too is that you know, Julian Phipps was probably going through a difficult time when he passed, because he was also going through his Saturn return as well. Saturn in unpredictable Aquarius at the time of his passing. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else in this chart, whether natally or through transits, that I wanted to talk about that I thought was interesting, you know, at this time. And but that is, you know, pretty much it. Transit. Only other thing would say that transit Venus was not far, was in fairly close proximity to his natal Saturn, and at that time, you know, that could indicate certain restrictions in feelings and sentiments at this point in time, and it could be just from other people or difficulty that he may have had in expressing them at this point in time. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.